Just us.
Just us.
A few days ago, the Golden State Warriors took on the San Antonio Spurs in a long-awaited rematch at Chase Center. The last time these two teams met, the Golden State Warriors somehow pulled off a victory against the hottest team in the NBA.
It was actually twice that
in
the
a
Warriors
row.
beat the Spurs.
Clapped them. But this time around, it didn't go the Warriors' way, unfortunately. And having gained some distance from the game, because I was away for a little while and we weren't able to record more immediately, it was a disappointing loss, but also somewhat encouraging.
Yeah, the Warriors had the lead for, I'd say, a majority of the game, but ended up losing 126 to 113. Wemby is
A freak
he's
of
incredible.
nature.
I don't know what else to say.
Yes.
He's just really good at what he does,
Yes.
and he really showed that on Wednesday night.
Getting better as he goes along. His three-point shooting is much better. He's more aggressive. His handles are better than his debut season. He's become a much better all-round player, and at his height, he's essentially unstoppable.
The Warriors also had a lot of players out for this game in particular. So it was the last game heading into the All-Star break. The Warriors will have a 1-week break until next Thursday when they take on the Boston Celtics at home. So, they really wanted to go into the All-Star break with some momentum. But instead, the Spurs got their, I think, sixth consecutive win heading into the All-Star break. So they're feeling pretty good. They're the second team in the West right now, right behind OKC. They're ranked the third best defensive team as well in the NBA. So they have a lot of accolades, again, with their name right now.
Yes.
And I think they're riding high on that.
The Warriors got no momentum instead of
No
momentum.
momentum. Absolutely no momentum.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a scrappy game. The Warriors had a hot start. It was actually one of my favorite first quarters that I've seen in a while.
Yes.
The Warriors made a lot of shots. It's like they couldn't miss almost. They had 38 points in the first quarter, which is pretty good offensive efficiency. Pods didn't miss any of his field goals in the first quarter. And also what I liked about the first quarter was that there were no turnovers.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a quarter without a turnover in quite some time.
Yes.
So I really liked that performance, and I was feeling pretty confident.
Yeah.
I know for you, you're nervous throughout the whole game.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
these days, every game that the Warriors is doing well in, I'm nervous in. Every games that they're doing bad in, I consign myself to probably going to lose. I think optimism right now is difficult to come by, especially with Steph off the court. Once he's back in, there's at least an X factor that you can hope it might kick into gear and save the team in a difficult situation, or at the very least, Steph, when he's on the court, that there's a good chance that any sort of lead he can grow it to the point where the Warriors can comfortably stay in the lead. Without him on the court, everything feels fragile. And you add to that the injury of Jimmy Butler, and everything feels a little less stable. But like you said, that could potentially change with the game against the Celtics when ideally Steph is back post All-Star break. He's not playing in the All-Star games. He took himself out of that to give himself some rest time, which means he could become that X factor again. And the hope is also the new addition to the team, Kristaps Porzingis, also comes back post All-Star break against his former team, which would be interesting because it would be Steph's return, as well as Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis going against their former team, which they won a championship on.
The more I'm hearing about Porzingis, I think the more motivated I'm getting that he is kind of the piece that the Warriors need in their offense, but as well as their defense. Like Draymond can't keep sustaining the defense, which has been pretty evident, I think, in some of his minutes being cut in critical minutes. We need another rim protector.
He had a good showing against the Spurs, scored about 17 points in 29 minutes. Fewer turnovers, more rebounding, more assisting, that kind of stuff. But
primary defender on Wemby.
Yes.
I think Wemby, he had come off of a 40-point game versus the Lakers right before this game against the Warriors. And, people are hyping him up, saying he's great, but then he encounters a defender like Draymond. And yes, he still scores 26 points, but he was 8 of 17. And a lot of his points came in free throws. So in the second quarter, actually, the main thing that I noticed after the hot start was the Warriors committed a bunch of fouls. and the Spurs got into the bonus with 9 minutes left in the quarter.
Yeah.
I thought they could have taken more advantage of that, to be honest, but I think Wemby ended up getting fouled a lot because there's not much you can do. You kind of, once he gets into the paint, he can't be stopped.
Yeah, that's the issue where there was definitely a few fouls, but what they were calling as fouls felt quite
Weird.
thin and weird,
Yeah.
especially when similar things would happen on the other end to the Warriors and it wouldn't be called as fouls. So there's that element of no lack of consistency, which has been an ongoing issue in the NBA, but also particularly with the Warriors. But at the same time, there's not really any adjustments made to a man who's like 7 foot something standing over most players, where any sort of defensive maneuvering towards him, because of his stature and the way his body is constructed, inevitably results in what is a text or on paper a foul. But you would think that there would be some adjustments because, like, how do you defend someone who's that tall when his arms are the size of normal human beings? Like, you can't really, if you're trying to jump and block a 3 point shot, there's like a 95% chance you're coming into contact with some part of his body because he's basically like floor to ceiling coverage. And, you know, there's no real adjustments made for that, which I know people are probably going to take that as why should they make adjustments to someone like Wemby just because he's tall, or it's they make adjustments for people, other players like
SGA.
SGA gets a different kind of whistle.
James Harden.
James Harden gets a different kind of whistle. Steph gets no whistle. So they're clearly able to look at a player and make an assessment based on who they are and their history and change the way they approach it. Like Steph is constantly being abused on the court. He's being held, he's being pushed, he's being everything. And because of the player he is, he doesn't get any calls. So that kind of change in the way that you perceive the game and also make adjudications and judgments based on who that player is isn't being made for someone like Wemby, which is like, it's difficult for a lot of players. The only people who can really guard him are people who are of similar stature or close to it, and there's not many of them. There's like Chet Holmgren, and maybe a freakishly athletic player who's got very, very, very high degree of body control, but those don't really exist in any meaningful way. Maybe one of like, I can't think of a single player who could probably pull that off. Maybe Wiggs or someone like that. He's pretty good at doing that, but I don't know. No one really is able to effectively guard Wemby. Your only thing you can really do is shoot over him. And there were a couple of situations where, like, Steph is obviously known for being able to get around Wemby's height. He showed it at the Olympics. He showed it in the Spurs games as well. In the game against the Spurs, the previous one, Pat Spencer actually pulled off a at least one 3 point shot over Wemby, and I think the way he did it was really interesting. He's kind of noticing the way Wemby moves, and when Wemby reacts to Pat's moves, he immediately like adjusts and got a free off. And you could see that Pods tried to do the same thing, where he saw someone before him get blocked. I think it might have been Pat or someone else like that actually. And so what he did was when Pods got the ball, he kind of drove forward, and the moment Wemby adjusted his footwork to take a backwards motion to account for Pods coming forward, he stopped and shot a three to kind of, he had loads of space to do it. Unfortunately, he airballed the shit out of it. So it was good game sense, good strategy, just not good execution. But unless you're that kind of present player, or you're like a Melton who's just going to try and run rings around him, there's not much you can do, and the referees aren't really helping. And I wonder if that's going to continue in the league as he continues to, gain dominance or whatever it may be.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what was interesting is I thought the first quarter was really good. The second quarter was kind of bad. At halftime, the Spurs had cut the lead from, I think it was like a 14-point lead, but they got it down to 4 points heading into halftime. And then the third quarter, the Warriors went on quite a run. They were up by 16 points, the largest lead of the game. But the Spurs cut it down to single digits very quickly.
Yeah.
And then they went on a huge run where at the end of the third quarter the game was tied.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like starting from 0-0, right?
Yeah.
When the game is tied heading into the fourth quarter.
That's also when the Warriors' offensive capabilities just fell off a cliff.
Yeah, what do you was it just offense
I
you
think
think
they
or defense
I think it was
as well?
I think it was a little bit of everything. Like I think they worked pretty hard in the first three quarters. And
so hard. I think that they
Yes.
lost their energy.
And they were, and this is kind of like, not everyone has the effortless ability to make offensive pushes and make buckets the way Steph has. Like Steph tries hard, but I feel like everyone else, if they want to, perform at a fraction of what Steph is capable of offensively, they have to put in double the work.
And that's why Steph has runner's knee right now, is because he has to run multiple miles per game in order to get open. So he's
Yes.
constantly moving. Not all players can do that for a consistent 4 quarters. And that
Yes.
was very apparent. Moody, Pods, a lot of players shot air balls in the fourth quarter. They just didn't have their legs
Yes.
under them
So,
in
but
the
in the
fourth.
first half, they were definitely doing that, and I think Tim Kawakami reported afterwards, or it might have been Tim, or it might have been Anthony. They reported as it was happening, like Moody looked slower. He looked like his legs were heavy. He looked like he couldn't, and he was the one who was making a lot of the 3-point shots in the first half. So it definitely felt like offensively and defensively they just ran out of energy. And maybe with some teams you can make that work, but when you're going up against the Spurs and Wemby, I think that just creates enough of an opportunity. Towards the end of the third and fourth is where De'Aaron Fox started looking effective. Up until that point, he didn't seem very effective. He had a few shots that were good, but he was also being kept away a lot and he was missing a lot. He's being defended very, very well. But the moment the Warriors took their foot off the gas because they just didn't have the energy to keep it there, that's when he started looking like the De'Aaron Fox that people know. And Wemby was just playing in his natural way, and Stephon Castle kind of came into his usual style there. He was again being
I
kind
love
of
the way that you just said Castle.
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 Yeah, Castle.
Very good. They had a lot of players contributing. Keldon Johnson, who I don't think I've really paid attention to at all, had an amazing game. As we've said, the other team tends to have one star or one unknown person that becomes a star.
Yeah, I
in
call
the
them
game.
supermarket players, where they just look like they've come out of a part-time shift at a Safeway, and no one who knows who they are, and then they suddenly just go crazy.
They do, yeah. So Keldon Johnson had 21 points. He was 8 of 13, plus 22 in the game overall. So he was a difference maker. And the
Harrison
Warriors
Barnes as
I
well.
think the Warriors really focus on defending the stars, right? So it's like they, have a defensive plan against Wemby, against Castle, against De'Aaron Fox. But then there's that extra player that they don't really account for.
And the defensive plan against Wemby is also what contributed to them to running out of steam, because it was
Yeah.
double him every single. If he had the ball, they were doubling him, and also were switching at the same time. So it was a lot of high energy movement, which you can't maintain without. You can't do that defensively and then also expect to have that same kind of energy and movement capability on offense, unless you have Steph Curry. So yeah, it was a difficult game. I think the one thing that you can say is they fought pretty hard for it. They ultimately came up short, but the hope is that when Steph is back, there's a little more fire in that engine or fire in that belly to keep them kind of contending. But we'll see how that goes. That it was good to see a gap where people who are on the bench currently could fit back in, and the team would be more effective almost immediately. But we'll see if it goes that way. We could get very, very unlucky, and
We'll see. I mean, I think one of the other things that changed the momentum in the fourth quarter was Guy Santos picked up his 5th foul.
yes,
And Guy Santos is the energy guy.
yes,
So that
difficult for him.
was difficult and challenging, I think, for the team to keep
And
up
again,
the momentum.
Not because of reckless play, because
This is
of
hard play. He was doing a good job.
yeah, like I said, he had to put his energy was going in as it usually was, but energy against someone like Wemby or players like the Spurs players, like it's the line between expending energy to defend and expending energy, and then the margin for error is so thin against someone who's like just in terms of stature is so different to you, is very, 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 very risky. What I do like is main thing for me walking away from the last few games has been, I like where various players are at in terms of how that could impact how the Warriors perform when Steph is back. I just mentioned that, but one player specifically is Gary Payton. Like in the last few games, he's been playing pretty well. I think he scored 10 in the last game against the Spurs, but he's been cutting way more. He's looked like that Gary Payton that could make a difference back in the day. And obviously Gary is known for being good at that kind of movement, but particularly when Steph is on the court. And there's a reason why Gary is still around despite having some rough patches, and it's because Steph really likes playing with him. So my hope is when he's back, Gary and Steph kind of connect in that same way again, and maybe Porzingis as well, and the team gets an overall boost from from the kind of return of those two players.
What's our projected starting lineup when everyone is healthy, you think?
It kind of all depends on where Porzingis Tingus Pingus is
Let's
at.
assume he's going to be playing. Is
If
he
we're
starting?
assuming, I think initially he's not going to be starting because I imagine they'll want to approach it in the same way they did with Al and DeAnthony Melton, where trying to avoid back-to-backs, maybe have him come off the bench because though both those two players had quite severe injuries, Melton coming off an ACL and Al having, was it sciatica or various other problems, but now they are playing very, very healthy. So I think if I'm Rick Celebrini, I probably would be like, let's stick to how we usually approach injured players because we've proved that we can get them back in fighting form pretty quickly if we do that. So I imagine Porzingis, Tingus Pingus comes off the bench, and Steph probably. I think Melton starts to take his place in.
He's been in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and I think they would. I think it would behoove them to keep Guy's momentum up because he's an energy player. It's shown that he's most effective when he's got a lot of minutes. He's capable of coming in for a few minutes here and there and injecting some energy, but I think that energy is only good for himself and potentially adding a few buckets to the stat line. But when he's on for longer times, he raises the entire team up a bit. So my hope is they keep him in the starting lineup as well, and then obviously Draymond there, maybe Al or someone like that. But
Yeah.
I think they've got more depth now. They still had depth previously, but they've got more versatile depth now.
All right. Well, we're going to go on the same break that the Warriors are on in terms of our podcasts episodes, but we'll be back next week. And we'll be talking a little bit about the All-Star weekend, as well as recapping the Warriors versus Celtics game. We're excited to chat with you then. Just us on 3. 1, 2, 3. Just us.